Hi, we're going to be discussing a case study in workplace favoritism and how these invisible social structures that we see can be uh, extremely disadvantageous to both the team efficiency and the team spirit. So let's look at the situation. We've got a manager getting angry at a subordinate for not doing their work properly. The surface scenario is that the manager was, shouted upon by her superiors, and there was some, fault in the report that person X delivered to the manager. But and the person really tries to clarify that the instructions were given by his peer, person Y. They're at the same level, but it turns out that the manager sort of favors person Y more, and they delegated the task to, go over some finer details with person X. Instead of doing that with person X, they just delegated it to person Y. Right? The actual chain of events from there on is that person X actually approached the manager to clarify on the requirements of the report, and and the managers just sort of send them back to person Y, and person X wasn't didn't trust person Y enough to do it straight away. So and that's the reason that they approached the manager to do it. Now they go back to person Y, and then person Y falters in delivering the right set of instructions to person X. The result being that the manager was unable to see that this is what was happening, and so there are a lot of things to learn from here, because instead of blaming the failure up to person Y, or rather the miscommunication between in the triangulation, instead of blaming the fault on the triangulation that happened, the manager got unfairly angry at person X. And so the point is to understand that if you were to apply systems thinking, which is to recognize the circular causal loops that are involved in this situation, then you'd be far more capable at sort of rectifying the mistake and not letting team morale sink into to the bottom of the sea. So here's like a systems thinking perspective. I hope it's not it doesn't. I hope it makes things clearer rather than making them more difficult. So if we were to just focus on the manifest dynamic blame loop, which is that the manager got shouted upon by their superiors for the error in the report. So, and now what happens is that they sort of ignore Y's involvement in this, which is what the flawed delegation was, right? Like, they trusted Y enough to delegate it to delegate their work of explaining what was to be written in the report. They trusted Y enough to do that for X, but there was ambiguous communication, and so there's this really latent. What we really see is this latent organizational structure, isn't it? That's happening when the manager delegated the work to Y, but because of the psychological bias, it could be due to many reasons, but the one that I've picked here is that maybe the manager dislikes X and they prefer Y for whatever reason. Maybe Y laughs at the manager's jokes more. Maybe X was awkward at a dinner table during some office dinner, and so the manager mistrusts X, which because of which they delegate this task to Y, and this sort of keeps repeating on and on. And that's what led to the report error. And the report is just one example of this, but these are the kind of loops, circular loops that just keep on repeating themselves, right? There's awkwardness that leads to a report error. There's more awkwardness at the dinner table because of the shouting and whatnot. And that's completely being ignored by the manager because we're only human, and we see things very linearly rather than seeing them in a non-linear circular causal manner. Like, you know, the straightforward explanation here is that X messed up, even though even though I did my duty of telling Y to tell X on how to do their job. But what's being sidestepped here is that maybe that latent system, that the thing about me delegating the task to Y and then Y sort of explaining it to X, maybe there was a fracture in that system. So the manager ignores Y's involvement, screams at person X. Now person X is demotivated and there's awkwardness, and there's future miscommunication and error risk. And you know, this keeps going on. By the way, you have to excuse the quality of this particular image. I mean, I created it using Google Gemini, but so, you know, some things are probably not, like the left part isn't all that accurate, but it, just to get a feel for the situation, I think it's good. You know, it basically forms a vicious loop in which there's future miscommunication, and then the manager's soft spot for Y keeps increasing, and then the manager keeps getting angry at X over and over and over again, and so on it goes, right? So the solution to this problem is that the manager needs to vet all the team members with respect to how tasks are being done, and instead of delegating tasks, they should establish direct communication with the person that was supposed to take, that was supposed to deliver. And mitigating personal bias is obviously, you know, a key sort of thing, and to focus on system failure, as I described over here, the system failure in the latent organization that forms from, you know, the manager delegating their tasks to Y rather than just directly giving them to X, and to not blame individuals. I mean, even the manager themselves. I mean, we're all blissfully unaware of circular causal